Obsession is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. To some, it is a weakness, a flaw, something to be resisted. To others, it is the very fuel of greatness. The truth is that obsession is neither inherently good nor bad. It is simply powerful. Like fire, it can provide warmth, light, and energy, or it can burn, consume, and destroy. When we speak of obsession, we are not describing a simple habit or a passing thought. We are describing something that takes root deep inside the mind. It grows silently, spreading its influence across one's thoughts, decisions, and behaviors until it becomes the dominant force of life. Unlike mere passion, which can fade and return in cycles, obsession does not rest. It insists. It repeats itself endlessly in the mind, whispering, demanding, and pulling all attention toward itself. Every great achievement in history carries the fingerprints of obsession. The scientist who refuses to abandon an unsolved equation, the painter who cannot stop returning to the canvas, the strategist who replays every possible move on the board, all are guided by the same relentless force. Without obsession, motivation often dies. Without obsession, ambition flickers out. But with it, people find energy when the body is tired, focus when the world distracts, and persistence when others quit. Yet obsession is not always noble. It can just as easily enslave as it can empower. The gambler who cannot walk away from the table is obsessed. The lover who cannot let go, even when love turns toxic, is obsessed. The tyrant who chases power beyond reason is obsessed. In this way, obsession is like a double-edged blade. It offers potential for greatness, but it demands a price, sometimes far more than we are willing to pay. To truly understand obsession, we must look at its anatomy. What gives obsession its grip on the human mind? It begins with focus. Most people scatter their attention across countless things. They care a little about many goals, many ideas, many pleasures. But obsession strips this away. It takes one thing and makes it central, magnifying it until all else seems secondary. Focus turns into fixation. Fixation turns into compulsion. And compulsion turns into obsession. This is why obsession is often linked with creativity, power, and genius. It allows a person to block out distractions and pour every ounce of thought and energy into one pursuit. The mathematician who solves what no one else can is not casually interested in numbers. He is consumed by them. The musician who composes symphonies that move the soul is not dabbling in sound. She is haunted by it. Their worlds shrink down to a single focus, and in that shrinking comes mastery. But mastery alone is not the only product of obsession. Identity itself begins to merge with the object of focus. A person no longer says, "I am working on this." They begin to feel, "I am this." The line between self and pursuit disappears. The athlete becomes the sport. The writer becomes the story. The leader becomes the mission. This merging of identity is why obsession is so difficult to escape. To abandon the object of obsession would feel like tearing out a piece of the self. From the outside, obsession looks extreme. Friends may say, "You are working too much." Family may say, "You need to relax." Society may whisper, "Balance is healthier." But those who are truly obsessed cannot hear these voices for long. The pull of obsession is stronger than comfort, stronger than balance, stronger than moderation. To the obsessed, moderation feels like death. They would rather burn out in pursuit than wither away in compromise. This is why history remembers the obsessed. We speak the names of those who could not stop, those who pushed beyond reason, those who sacrificed comfort for greatness. The obsessed are remembered not because they lived balanced lives, but because they poured themselves so completely into one pursuit that the world could not ignore them. But obsession also leaves ruins. For every masterpiece painted, there is a body exhausted. For every empire built, there are relationships abandoned. For every discovery made, there are minds that collapse under the weight of their own intensity. The fire of obsession burns indiscriminately, and whether it creates or destroys depends on how it is directed. So the question is not whether obsession is good or bad. The question is whether obsession is controlled or uncontrolled, directed or wild. Obsession that is directed, harnessed, and aimed toward a goal can elevate a person beyond imagination. Obsession that is uncontrolled, that spirals into addiction or destructive fixation, can reduce a person to ruin. To master obsession is to learn how to harness energy without being consumed by it. It requires self-awareness, the ability to recognize when a pursuit is no longer serving but instead enslaving. It requires discipline, the strength to channel energy where it produces growth rather than destruction. And it requires vision, the clarity to choose an object of obsession worthy of sacrifice, Consider the difference between two men, one obsessed with power for its own sake, the other obsessed with creating knowledge that will outlast him. Both will sacrifice, both will endure, both will push themselves beyond ordinary limits, but one will leave destruction in his wake, while the other leaves a legacy. The difference is not in the intensity of obsession, but in the direction, and yet, even with direction, obsession carries risk, because once the mind is captured, balance is no longer natural. The obsessed do not think of rest, relationships, or health unless forced. Everything bends toward the obsession, and so, even noble obsessions must be managed carefully. They must be tempered by awareness and by the wisdom to step back before the fire consumes everything. But few obsessed individuals ever step back willingly. That is why obsession often ends only when the body breaks, when relationships fracture, or when success itself reveals the emptiness behind the pursuit. To live with obsession is to live with intensity, but also with danger. What then should we do with obsession? Should we reject it, fearing its cost, or should we embrace it, seeking its gifts? The answer depends on one's courage, because obsession is not for the faint of heart. It is not for those who seek comfort or ease. It is for those willing to pay a price, those willing to walk a path that may burn as much as it illuminates. To live obsessed is to live differently. It is to wake up each day with the same thought, to go to bed each night with the same hunger, to measure life not by variety but by depth. It is to dive into one thing so fully that the world fades away. It is both exhilarating and exhausting, both rewarding and dangerous. And yet, when we look at the lives of those we admire most, we see obsession. We see it in the inventor who never stopped building, the philosopher who never stopped questioning, the warrior who never stopped training, the lover who never stopped longing. Obsession is not the exception. It is the common thread that runs through greatness. To understand obsession fully, we must trace it back to the roots of human nature. The human mind is not designed to be evenly distributed across endless tasks. It is designed to latch onto what feels urgent, what feels necessary, what feels rewarding. This is why survival itself was once an obsession. For early humans, every waking moment was tied to finding food, avoiding predators, seeking shelter. Their minds could not wander freely, because wandering could mean death. In this sense, obsession is not unnatural. It is ancient. It is survival written into the core of the mind. But as survival became easier, the mind sought other objects of focus. Once the stomach was fed and the body sheltered, the mind did not rest. It searched for new challenges, new fascinations, new pursuits. This is how art was born. This is how philosophy began. This is how the seeds of science, politics, and conquest were planted. Obsession shifted from the immediate to the abstract, from the practical to the visionary. Humanity evolved not just because it could survive, but because it could obsess. Consider the builder of ancient monuments, spending decades of life moving stone after stone. Such labor was not rational by ordinary standards. It was not efficient. It was not practical, yet obsession with the eternal, with the monumental, drove entire civilizations to create works that still stand today. Without obsession, there would be no pyramids, no cathedrals, no towering statues carved into stone. These are not products of balanced lives. They are products of obsession stretching across generations. Even in modern times, obsession remains the invisible architect of progress. Every great invention, every breakthrough, every revolution in thought begins with a mind that cannot let go of a single problem. The scientist staring at formulas for years, the entrepreneur waking at night with visions of possibilities, the athlete repeating the same motion until the body is carved into precision. None of this is possible without obsession. Passion alone fades when obstacles rise. Obsession pushes through, but obsession does more than create, it isolates. Those who are deeply obsessed often find themselves misunderstood, even alienated. Friends may not understand why someone sacrifices parties, comfort, and rest. Family may not understand why their loved one spends countless nights alone, immersed in a single pursuit. To the obsessed, this solitude is not punishment, it is necessity. It is the silence in which their fire burns brightest. Yet this solitude comes at a cost. And many obsessed figures throughout history have died lonely, misunderstood, or rejected by the very society that later worshipped their achievements. This paradox is the curse of obsession. It grants power beyond measure, but it asks for sacrifice beyond reason. And those who accept the bargain must live with its consequences. Some thrive, some break. Most hover somewhere between triumph and torment, riding the line where obsession both gives life meaning and drains it of balance. Let us look deeper at the psychology of obsession. Neuroscience tells us that obsession is rooted in the brain's reward system. When the mind attaches deep importance to an idea, action, or person, it releases signals that reinforce the attachment. Every small step toward the obsession feels like a reward. Every thought about it activates the same circuits that drive addiction. This is why obsession feels unstoppable. The brain itself fuels the fire, making the object of obsession appear brighter, louder, more urgent than anything else. But obsession is not random. It often attaches itself to what resonates with a person's deepest identity. The artist who obsesses over beauty is not simply drawn to colors on a canvas. They are seeking to express something fundamental about themselves. The leader who obsesses over power is not merely greedy. They are seeking validation, control, or immortality. The lover who obsesses over another person is not merely infatuated. They are projecting their own hopes, fears, and desires onto the beloved. Obsession is the mirror of the soul, reflecting back what we crave most. This is why obsession is dangerous, because it reveals too much. It exposes the core of who we are, and sometimes, we are not ready to face that truth. A person who obsesses over wealth may discover that their hunger comes not from desire, but from insecurity. A person who obsesses over approval may realize they are chained to the wounds of childhood rejection. Obsession is not only a pursuit of something external, it is an unveiling of the inner self. And yet, despite the risks, obsession is irresistible. Those who taste it once rarely return to a life of moderation. Ordinary pleasures feel empty compared to the intensity of obsession. Balance feels dull compared to the fire of single-minded pursuit. This is why the obsessed are often restless when they are forced away from their object of fixation. Without it, life feels hollow. With it, life feels alive. So what does obsession demand of us? It demands clarity. If one is to live with obsession, one must choose carefully what to obsess over. Because once chosen, the obsession becomes a cage as much as a key. It locks the mind onto one path, closing off others. A person obsessed with fame may never know peace. A person obsessed with truth may never know comfort. A person obsessed with love may never know freedom. The choice of obsession is the choice of destiny. This is why wisdom lies not in rejecting obsession, but in mastering it. A life without obsession is often a life without depth. But a life enslaved by obsession is a life without freedom. The balance is delicate. To harness obsession as fuel, but not let it consume the soul. Few succeed. Most fall too far to one side or the other. But those who succeed achieve something rare. Greatness without ruin. Fire without ashes. History shows us examples of both. There are men who built empires through obsession and died broken by their own hunger. There are thinkers who unlocked truths that changed the world and yet ended their days in madness. But there are also figures who managed to direct their obsession wisely, channeling it into creations that uplifted generations. Their stories remind us that obsession is not destiny alone. It is a choice, a tool, a force to be wielded. Imagine, then, the possibility of a world where people do not fear obsession, but learn to use it. A world where students harness it for learning, where artists channel it into creation, where leaders direct it toward justice instead of domination. Such a world would not be balanced in the traditional sense, but it would be alive with intensity, with passion sharpened into power. Perhaps the future belongs not to the balanced, but to the obsessed who have mastered their fire. But mastery requires awareness, and awareness requires honesty. To be obsessed is to ask yourself, why this? Why does this thing command so much of me? Why does it call me louder than all else? The answers to these questions reveal the core of obsession, and in that revelation lies the key to whether obsession becomes a gift or a curse. For obsession is not just about doing more, it is about becoming more. It transforms the person as much as it transforms the world. The obsessed are not only remembered for what they did, they are remembered for who they became. They became embodiments of their pursuit, living monuments to the power of fixation. And so, obsession is both a mirror and a forge. It reflects who we are and shapes who we will become. It is the fire that lights the dark and the fire that burns the hand. To live with obsession is to live with danger, but also with the possibility of greatness. It is not safe, it is not easy, but it is unforgettable. To dive further into the nature of obsession, we must look not only at the individuals who embody it, but at the societies that are shaped by it. Entire cultures rise and fall on collective obsessions. Ancient Rome was obsessed with conquest. The Renaissance was obsessed with beauty and knowledge. The Industrial Revolution was obsessed with progress and speed. Today, the modern world is obsessed with connection. Endless streams of information, infinite notifications, constant updates. Obsession is not only personal, it is historical. A society's obsession directs its destiny. When Rome's obsession with power outgrew its ability to sustain itself, the empire crumbled. When Europe's obsession with exploration led ships across oceans, the map of the world changed forever. When the 20th century became obsessed with technology, humanity leaped into the skies, split the atom, and connected continents with invisible waves. None of this was balanced. It was obsession. And as individuals live with the paradox of obsession, so too do nations, greatness entwined with self-destruction. But obsession does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in ordinary routines. The worker who wakes every morning and repeats the same tasks for decades may not call it obsession, but it is. It is an obsession with stability, with survival, with duty. The parent who sacrifices everything for their child is driven by obsession as much as by love. The student who refuses to stop until every detail is perfect is moved not only by discipline but by the quiet force of obsession. We may not see it, but it surrounds us, and yet, obsession has degrees. At its lightest, it is interest, focus, dedication. At its middle, it is drive, passion, immersion. At its peak, it is all-consuming fire. The spectrum is wide, and the line between healthy devotion and destructive fixation is thin. This is why obsession must always be questioned. Is it giving life, or is it draining it? Is it building, or is it burning? Is it a torch, or is it a cage? Consider relationships. Love itself can become obsession. When it is balanced, love nurtures, it gives strength, it allows freedom. But when it tips into obsession, it suffocates, it clings, it controls. Many tragedies in history and literature are born not from hatred but from obsessive love. The lover who cannot let go, the admirer who turns into a stalker, the passion that becomes possession. In these cases, obsession transforms the most beautiful force into one of destruction. The same is true for ambition. Ambition is necessary. It fuels progress, it drives achievement. But when ambition becomes obsession, it blinds. It blinds to ethics, to empathy, to humanity itself. Leaders who pursued power at all costs often left ruins behind them. Entrepreneurs who sacrificed every relationship in pursuit of success often discovered too late that victory felt empty. Obsession with ambition can create monuments, but it can also create monsters. Art, too, walks this line. The artist who obsesses over perfection may create masterpieces, or may never finish a single work, trapped forever in dissatisfaction. The writer who obsesses over words may produce brilliance, or may drown in endless revisions, paralyzed by their own standard. Obsession fuels creation, but it can also destroy it. Many artists who changed the world also lived in torment, caught between inspiration and madness. But should obsession be feared? Then, no. To fear obsession is to fear the fire that makes us human. The task is not to extinguish it but to guide it. The river of obsession, uncontrolled, floods and drowns. Controlled, it irrigates and sustains. The challenge of life is not whether to be obsessed, but what to be obsessed with, because obsession is inevitable. The mind craves it. The spirit hungers for it. The only question is whether it will be chosen wisely or blindly. So how does one choose? The first step is awareness. To stop and look at your own life. To ask, what do I return to, again and again? What thought, what dream, what pursuit refuses to leave me? This is the seed of obsession. Some seeds grow into trees that nourish. Others grow into weeds that choke. But the seed is always there. It is waiting for attention, for direction, for cultivation. The second step is discipline. Obsession without discipline devours itself. Discipline gives obsession form. It channels the fire into shape. Without discipline, obsession consumes nights without rest, days without focus, and energy without purpose. With discipline, obsession builds masterpieces, careers, legacies. Discipline is the structure that allows obsession to endure without collapse. The third step is sacrifice. No obsession comes without cost. To pursue one thing deeply is to deny many other things. The obsessed cannot have it all. They must choose. They must surrender comfort, balance, sometimes even relationships. Sacrifice is the price of obsession, and the greater the obsession, the higher the price. This is why many fear it, because to follow obsession honestly is to walk away from the safety of moderation. The fourth step is acceptance. To embrace obsession is to accept the life it creates. Some will admire you, some will not understand you, some will envy you, some will call you mad, but obsession is not lived for others, it is lived for the fire within. Acceptance allows the obsessed to carry on without constantly seeking validation or approval. It allows them to embrace their path fully, without shame, without apology. With these steps, obsession transforms. It ceases to be a shadow chasing you and becomes a torch you carry. It becomes not a prison but a purpose. And with purpose, obsession can build wonders. Look around the world today. Every great advancement you see, every invention, every piece of art, every structure that towers above the earth, exists because someone was obsessed. Someone could not let go. Someone refused to be normal, refused to be satisfied, refused to stop. Their obsession shaped reality itself. And in this way, obsession is not merely personal, it is creative. It remakes the world. But obsession also remakes the self. To live obsessed is to live transformed. The mind sharpens, the will hardens, the identity crystallizes. The obsessed do not drift. They move with force, with intensity, with direction. Even when they stumble forward. Even when they fall toward something. They are not passive. They are alive. And perhaps this is the true meaning of obsession. Not madness, not imbalance, but aliveness. To be obsessed is to be fully awake to something, to be consumed by it, to let it ignite the spirit. In a world where so many drift half asleep, dulled by distraction and routine, the obsessed burn bright. They may burn out, they may burn others, but for as long as the fire lasts, they are undeniable. This is why obsession is remembered. Not because it is safe, but because it is powerful. The world forgets the balanced, but it remembers the obsessed. Their names echo, their works endure, their lives leave marks. They are the ones who stand out against the gray. They are the ones who show what a human being, fully ignited, can do. To complete our journey into the heart of obsession, we must face its ultimate question. What is the cost, and what is the reward? Every obsession carries both. To ignore this truth is to misunderstand the very core of what obsession is. The cost of obsession is immediate. Time, energy, relationships, health. Hours are stolen from sleep. Days are stolen from leisure. Weeks and years disappear into pursuit. The obsessed are rarely balanced. Their diet suffers. Their rest declines. Their friendships thin. They forget birthdays. They cancel plans. They withdraw from gatherings. The ordinary joys of life are traded away. To those who watch, this seems like madness. To those who live it, it feels necessary. Because to the obsessed, nothing else matters as much as the object of their obsession. The reward of obsession is less visible, but infinitely powerful. It is mastery, it is progress. It is the ability to move where others stand still, to climb where others hesitate, to reach where others give up. Obsession builds skill. It refines talent. It deepens understanding. It transforms possibility into reality. And while it costs much, it gives something that cannot be purchased any other way: greatness. Greatness is not achieved by moderation. No empire, no masterpiece, no revolution, no discovery ever came from those who only gave a little. It came from those who gave everything. The artist who painted through hunger, the scientist who experimented through ridicule, the athlete who trained through pain, the leader who strategized through endless nights. Greatness is born not of balance, but of obsession. But greatness is not the only reward. Obsession also brings meaning. To live without obsession is to drift, to float, to wander without anchor. To live with obsession is to know why you wake up, why you work, why you sacrifice. It gives life weight, direction, significance. Even if the world never sees, the obsessed knows, and that knowledge sustains them. Still, obsession is dangerous when blind. When it chooses us, rather than us choosing it, it can lead into darkness. Obsession with resentment leads to vengeance. Obsession with control leads to tyranny. Obsession with perfection leads to paralysis. Obsession with image leads to emptiness. This is why awareness is vital. To live with obsession consciously is to direct the fire. To live with it unconsciously is to be consumed. And so the question becomes, how do we live with obsession wisely? The answer is not to run from it, but to steer it. To know its power, to respect its danger, to harness its strength. To choose obsessions that elevate rather than degrade, that build rather than destroy. To treat obsession as a weapon, not as a master. When we look at history's greatest figures, this becomes clear. Their obsessions were not random. They aligned with purpose. The philosopher obsessed over truth. The leader obsessed over justice, or sometimes power. The artist obsessed over beauty. The inventor obsessed over possibility. Each obsession carved a legacy. Some legacies inspire. Others serve as warnings. But all of them reveal the same truth. Obsession defines destiny. And obsession does not end with death. Works endure. Ideas echo. Stories survive. The obsessed leave marks that outlive them. Their names may be celebrated or cursed, but they are remembered, and in this way, obsession achieves immortality. Balance fades, moderation disappears. But obsession is written into history. This raises another question. Is obsession worth the sacrifice? Each must answer for themselves. Some will say no, choosing peace, comfort, balance. They may live quietly, happily, without extremes. Others will say yes, choosing fire, risk, sacrifice. They may live chaotically, intensely, dangerously. Neither path is wrong, but only one path changes the world. And perhaps, obsession is not something we choose at all. Perhaps it chooses us. A child who cannot stop drawing, the thinker who cannot stop questioning, the leader who cannot stop planning, the athlete who cannot stop moving, the artist who cannot stop creating. They do not wake one morning and say, I will be obsessed. They simply are. It is in their nature. It is in their blood. It calls them, and they cannot refuse. Yet even for those chosen by obsession, there is choice in how to respond. Some fight it, trying to force themselves into balance, only to feel empty. Some surrender fully, burning until nothing is left. Others learn to guide it, to use it, to integrate it into life without being destroyed by it. These are the ones who turn obsession into genius. And so we return to the essence. Obsession is fire. It is neither good nor bad by itself. It destroys or creates depending on how it is handled. It consumes or empowers, depending on how it is directed. It enslaves or liberates, depending on whether it is unconscious or conscious. Fire in a forest is destruction. Fire in a hearth is warmth. Fire in an engine is movement. Fire in a torch is light. The same fire, different use. The same obsession, different outcome. If you are listening to these words, ask yourself, what is your fire? What thought refuses to leave you? What dream will not die? What pursuit makes time disappear? That is your obsession. You may deny it, you may bury it, you may fear it, but it is there, and if you embrace it, it can change everything. But know this, the world will not always applaud. It will question you, it will doubt you, it will tell you to stop, to calm down, to be reasonable. The world loves balance because balance is predictable, safe, ordinary. The world fears obsession because obsession is dangerous, disruptive, extraordinary. If you follow your obsession, you will not always be understood, but you will be alive in a way that few ever are. And when your life nears its end, what will matter more, that you were safe, or that you were alive, that you blended in, or that you burned bright, that you lived moderately, or that you lived fully? Obsession asks these questions, and only you can answer. So, what is obsession? It is the force that shapes greatness and madness, creation and destruction, passion and despair. It is the engine of history, the heartbeat of art, the secret of progress. It is fire, it is hunger, it is power, and whether it devours or elevates depends on how it is held. Hold it wisely, choose it carefully, direct it consciously, and obsession will not consume you, it will define you. If this reflection awakens something inside you, don't let it fade. Carry this fire with you. Share it, spread it, live it. And if you found meaning here, subscribe for more, because together we will continue to unravel the forces that shape the human soul.